finally here. It is finally here.
Right, so if you know me, you know I'm not only a camera nerd, but also a huge gadget nerd. And what is one of the most useful gadgets out there? Your phone, of course. It makes calls, it sends texts, it plays music and videos, provides GPS mapping, and oh yeah, it can take pictures. But you would think that as someone who almost always carries his mirrorless camera and a myriad of lenses everywhere, how important could my smartphone camera really be to me? It's important! Look, I still use my mobile phone camera a lot. In a pinch, my phone is quicker to use and faster to share images and videos with family and friends. And most people have come to expect quality images when I do share things. So I want a nice camera system, no matter if it's in one of my bags or in my pocket. With that said, the Google Pixel 6 and mostly 6 Pro finally got an upgrade to their camera system. AI and computational stuff aside, Google finally put in a new larger camera sensor, and for the first time on the Pro, a triple camera setup on the back. Finally. Yes, I know iPhones and other phones have had this, and I'm not going to get into which is best. I play in all camps, I have iPads, I have MacBooks, I build my own custom Windows gaming desktops, all while using an Android phone. Hey, it's just nice to have options, okay? But yeah, back to phones. Sammy, Apple, and the Google flagships, they all take respectable photos. And I'd be happy shooting with any one of them. That old saying of, the best camera is the one you have with you, remains true. So, the question remains, if I have both a Pixel 6 Pro and the Sony Mirrorless camera with me at the same time, which one should I use? Well, let's talk some quick camera specs. The Pixel 6 Pro has 3 lenses, well, 4 if you count the front, but we're gonna ignore that one for now. 3 lenses on the back. The main lens is a 26mm f1.9. The wide-angle lens is an 18mm at f2.2, and the telephoto lens is 104mm at f3.5. Now, those focal lengths are full-frame equivalents, so let's see what glass we can use to closely match those numbers as close as we can, shooting with a Sony APS-C camera, which has a crop factor of 1.53. Camera I'm gonna go with is this guy, the Sony a6500. I would use my Sony a6600, but that is what's recording me now, so this will have to do. Well, as you can see, I do have a lot of lenses for this system, so I have a lot of choices, and for the main camera to compete with the Pixel 6, we're gonna go with this one. This is the Sony 16-55 G lens, and we will be setting it to 17mm. Yeah, 17mm to match the primary lens on the Pixel. For the wide angle lens, we're gonna go with the widest one I have, which is this, the Sony 10-18mm. And to match the wide angle lens, I need to set this one at 12mm. And lastly, we need a telephoto lens. I've got a couple over here, but I am going to choose this guy. This is a Sony 18-105 G lens, and to match the zoom lens on the back of the Pixel 6, it needs to be set to 68mm. All right, so enough with the specifics. I'll touch more on that later. For now, I got the gear, and the plan is to put the Pixel 6, no, not the Pixel 6, to put the Sony on auto mode, set the focal length to match that of the Pixel 6 so that we have a similar framing, and then I'll just use tap to focus on both cameras and leave everything else as is. There will be no post-processing, no editing, no filters applied, nothing, unless otherwise noted. I just want to see how each camera system handles different subject and lighting scenarios, especially in areas with strong backlighting or high dynamic range, and to really see what a $900 smartphone can do compared to $3,500 worth of Sony gear. So let's go ahead and get started with just some natural indoor lighting and see how they do. All right, so as you can see over here, I've already set up the lenses that I'm going to be using for these test shots as just a product photography shot. Goal here is I'm going to use the main lens. No changes to the settings. I'm just going to do a vertical shot, frame it up, tap on that front element on the front lens, and get a level, snap. All right, and we're gonna use this guy. We need to set the 17 millimeter, so that is, well, you know what helps? Taking off the lens cap. All right, 17 millimeter, just ever so slightly in. I'm gonna try to frame up the shot exactly the same. We're on full auto. Comparing it to the phone. Looks like it's right about here. Touch to focus, right on that front element. Sony is hunting a little bit. All right. Got the wide angle on now. I figured for this shot, let's go ahead and shoot the kitchen, because pretending like it's a real estate shot or something. We want to see how this looks all naturally lit by just the ceiling lights in the kitchen. Going with the 10 to 18 lens at 12 millimeters. And I'm going to try to get at least the handles on the left, the entire counter, and all the way to the right side where the wall is. All right, there's that shot. Try to get the same shot on the Pixel now. Put it to the 0.7x lens. Should be right about there, and go. All right, so for this last indoor shot, we're gonna go ahead and shoot in the kitchen again, mainly because the rest of the house is kind of messy. We're gonna put the we're gonna take the 10 to 18 off. And we're gonna put the 18 to 105 on to be our zoom lens. And this will just give you an example. I'm gonna shoot from the same vantage point as I just did, shooting this way. But this time I'm gonna have these cactus in the shot, and I'm gonna use the zoom lens set to 68 millimeter on the Sony, and I'm gonna use the 4x telephoto zoom on the back of the Pixel 6 and see how they compare. Opening up the camera app. Let's try to get that same perspective. So there's the wide angle lens. And now we're gonna flip it over to the, I'm gonna flip this over to the 4. Bam, look at that. Bring it down. Get a shot of those. Just like that. 1, 2, 3, bang. We got our shot that we're comparing it to. Set it down right there so we can see it. Bust out this guy, stand in the same spot. I'm gonna zoom in to 68 millimeters. I make these match up as best as I can, folks. There. Pretty dang close. What do you think? All right, so I know I was showing you those images as I shot them on the screen with the EXIF data, so you can look at those and pause there to see a little higher quality. But I wanted to see what they look like on the big screen, at least a bigger screen to me, so I can really compare the Pixel versus the Sony. So here we go. And I've got these open side by side in Lightroom so that I can zoom around and really pixel peep. And right off the bat, I'm already seeing better rich color in the Sony shot. It looks like the Pixel's a little more cooler tones and a little bit more exposed so that you can see the shadows better. But you can tell, like in the lens, that like if you look at the words on the front of the lens, that the Pixel shot is sharper. And so one of the things that these smartphones do nowadays is they actually take a whole bunch of shots that you don't see before you press the shutter button, and it gathers all these different frames of what you're looking at. And then when you do press the shutter button, it's taking all the data from all of those images and combining them into one shot so that it can reduce as much noise and gather as much detail as possible. So that is one of the pros to shooting on the phone. But I will say that the Sony does have a little richer tone to it that I prefer, but it also at the same time has more noise. Now, I was shooting in auto, so it's going to choose all the settings for me, and on here I can see it shows ISO 2500, which is a bit grainy. All right, next image. All right, so now we're looking at the wide angle shot, and I'm gonna take a look here on the fridge. Yep, same story as before, much grainier on the right side, which is the Sony. Looks like the Sony chose an ISO of 4000, and it's shooting at f4, which is the widest aperture that lens can do to gather as much light as possible. That's just the nature of indoor photography if you're not adding your own additional lights like flash or strobes. And so looking around some more, same story. I do see more detail and brighter image on the Pixel again, and a slightly better dynamic range, I think, on the Pixel as well, because of its ability to take multiple exposures and stack those and gather the details from each part of the image that makes the final result. All right, so let's go on to the last one, which is the most interesting one to me because I'm not used to having a phone with quite a decent zoom level on it, and then especially trying to use it indoors. So zooms usually excel outdoors during the day where it has a lot of light from the sun to help out. Wildlife photographers love that. Sports photographers love that. So indoor zooming in can definitely be a challenge. So let's see what we got here. All right, so this is the cactus shot. Let's zoom in on the cactus. Same story again. Grainier on the right, a little cleaner on the left. Maybe a little bit less detail on the zoom lens and even that wide angle lens. They do have smaller apertures and I think a smaller sensor, so they can't gather as much light as that primary lens can, but still pretty decent job of cleaning it up. And here are the bottles in the back. So this is something I noticed earlier and I didn't mention, but you can really see it exaggerated here. And that is that the bokeh, or the out of focus background blur on the Sony, is way more pronounced. And part of that is just because the Sony has a bigger sensor physically. So it can get more depth of field, even though it's shooting at f4 compared to the Pixel, which says it's shooting at f3.5. That background blur is going to be more pronounced on the bigger sensor camera pretty much every single time. And that is both good and bad depending on what you're shooting. All right, so those are the indoor results. If I'm being honest, I kind of like using my phone or the Pixel over my main camera, just because in a pinch, they come out a lot cleaner. If I wanted to get that same clean shot on my Sony, I would probably need to use a longer shutter speed so that I can reduce my ISO. And if I got a longer shutter speed, that means it needs to be on a tripod. So it's just a lot more work. It can be done, and I can get more professional results that look really great. But if you're shooting people, shooting a long exposure means you're gonna have a blurry face anyways, so might as well use the Pixel. All right, so those were the indoor shots. How about we go outside and see how it does out in daylight, where we don't have to worry so much about all that noisiness and graininess that kind of gives the Pixel the upper hand. I'm planning to go out to Papago Park tomorrow around sunset, so I'll meet you guys out there and just record a few quick clips, taking some shots, and then we'll analyze those just like we did with these ones. All right, so for the primary lens shot, we're gonna take a shot of the water here flowing through with this little bush in the corner and that sun kind of in the top right. Should be a good dynamic range test of both cameras. Damn mosquitoes, get out of here. All right, so this next spot, we're gonna shoot at Hole in the Rock, and since it's so far over there, we're gonna go with the longer lens, set to 68 millimeters to match up with the zoom lens on the Pixel 6 Pro. It's pretty cool. You can actually see people up there in the, hiking up there in the Hole in the Rock. I'm gonna try the enhanced digital zoom on the Pixel 6 just to see how much detail we can get, you know, just for the hell of it. Not too bad. All right, before it gets too dark, last one. We've got the wide angle on. We're gonna compare that to the wide angle on here. 12 millimeters versus Pixel 6. Let's see how they do. Now let's make sure these match up real quick, because that was a quick snap. All right, that should be all we need for the outdoor shots at golden hour. I'm gonna go back to the office and check them out and give you my thoughts. All right, see you there. All right, we are back in the office again. Let's try and zip through this last set of images. Got the pixel shot on the left, Sony a6500 shot on the right. This is the primary lens. Comparing each, pixel looks good. It's got great dynamic range. If we look at the sun here, we can see a little bit more detail in there. It's not quite as blown out. There's less blue in the sky on the Sony. But we also can see there's more contrast on the Sony and less contrast on the Pixel. So Pixel seems to really favor brightening up those shadows, which is great in some circumstances, but in others, I do like having a little bit more darkness where it should be dark in the image. But yeah, let's zoom in real quick. And yep, you can see those are mosquitoes, I think, because they were all around me while I was shooting, which was another reason why I was trying to hurry up and get those shots done. But anyways, the other thing we notice here is we do have quite the solar flare. We've got a little bit more of a starburst on the Sony. It did shoot at f8, and the Pixel stayed at f1.9 because it's not a variable aperture. But on this one, I like the dynamic range more on the Pixel, but I do like the contrast on the Sony. All right, let's move on to the next one. So this time around, I went with the zoom lens next. Just happened to be the next spot I came across, and I thought the zoom lens would work best here. Pixel shot on the left again, Sony shot on the right. Both look really, really good. Very, very similar. We're not shooting into the sun this time, so we're not having to deal with as much dynamic range. But let's go ahead and just do a little pixel peep. We'll click on these people here in the hole in the rock that we can see. And fairly similar. Not too much difference in this. So it seems like yeah, even the sky is a similar blue. So when it comes to the zooms outdoors, I think that they're on par unless you actually need more zoom, which you would have more options for with the Sony because there are more higher, longer reaching zoom lenses. But regardless, if you're going focal length to focal length, I think that they both look great. Not too much difference in the images. Slightly sharper actually on the Pixel, which has been a trend. Speaking of that crazy zoom, let's bring that crazy zoom one up really quick. All right, so this shot right here, this is using the 4x zoom on the Pixel, but then also pinch to zoom in, the max that it can do. And not too bad looking at it on the screen right now. I'm sure it would look fine on social media if you were sharing it, especially if it was a more interesting image. But let's check to see what happens if we zoom in here. It's a guy on the rock here. Yeah, okay, so it's already highly digitally zoomed in with the Pixel's software and algorithm. And of course, if you were to zoom in even more, it basically turns into a water painting. But you know, it kind of looks nice if you want that water painting look, right? So, all right, let's move on. Okay, so now we have the wide angle lens. Again, Pixel on the left, Sony on the right. And again, we can see that the Pixel is really bringing up those shadows. It's boosting the shadows, which in this image I actually do like a little bit more. It does allow you to see a bit more into the trees, the tree line, which looks nice and clean. And yeah, I think I do prefer the Pixel here. I might darken the shadows just a hair if I was editing it, but it looks really good. And you can even look, if you look in the sky over here to the left, you look in this part of the sky, it's not as apparent here. When you zoom out, you can see a little bit more of that warmth, that glow from the sunset coming through, as opposed to it being blown out. If you look at it on the Sony, it is actually blown out. So the Sony noticed that brightness and basically dimmed down the image to try to recover some of that overexposed area, but in doing so, darkened the shadows a lot more. If you were editing this, if you were shooting in RAW, you would have the ability to bring those shadows up no problem and make it just as good as the Pixel. But again, this whole experiment was just to put the Pixel 6 cameras on the back versus the Sony at the same focal length with shooting on auto as well. And if you're just a regular person shooting, which one would you pick? Right now, I'm looking at the Pixel for most of my shots. It looks pretty good. All right, so what camera is best? I mean, I really did like the Pixel's ability to handle the low light situation indoors. There's a lot less noise, and yeah, if I wanted to do that same thing on my mirrorless camera, I would need a fast glass or prime lens with a shallow depth of field, which is great. But if I'm shooting multiple subjects, maybe not so great. So some of the Pixel Pros, low light, less grain, higher dynamic range, easier, faster to shoot with, and seems like it's sharper, although sometimes a little bit too sharp. The pros for the Sony Mirrorless are that it can actually have that natural background blur bokeh without using AI portrait mode type stuff. It has the ability to shoot in RAW, and the phone does too, but the Sony has a bigger sensor and can gather more dynamic range from its RAW images, it seems. And if you're editing the RAW, you can then reduce the noise or grain. You can shift the white balance as needed. It has higher megapixels for cropping, and there's way more focal lengths available to you because you could change out the lenses as needed and get even more reach or even wider shots. Personally, I like both. My phone for when I need like a quick shot or somehow I couldn't have my main camera with me. I do find the process of processing my images an artistic and enjoyable experience. I mean, that's why I bought the iPad mini with the Apple Pencil. So it's hard for me to say which one is better. It really is just situational. I can take better shots on my Sony if I want to, but if I just need a quick shot, the phone seems like it does a good enough job. Okay, so I shot the intro to this video using my Pixel 4, and I thought it only fitting to end it by shooting the outro with the Pixel 6, plus give you a little bit idea of how the video quality is. Even though my channel is more about photography, might as well show you how good the video camera is. Hint, it is better than previous Pixel phones. iPhones, though, are still better. All right, well, with that said, that's Ginter for now. I really hope you enjoyed the video or learned something or found it useful. If you did, do me a solid, hit that like button. It really does help out. Also, consider subscribing. I do camera talk on here, camera tech, photography stuff, behind the scenes, all that. I'd love to have more people who are like-minded join the community. And yeah, also drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think about phone cameras, especially the Pixels, the new iPhones, and their computational photography prowess and how they're doing compared to like these new Sony mirrorless cameras, because yeah, it's doing most of the work for us. Maybe not as artistic, but it's doing amazing things. All right, enough rambling for now. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next video.